The training arena was massive. Its circular floor stretched 50 meters across, surrounded by energy barriers that glowed a soft blue. Above, observation decks held students from 12 different species. They watched as Lieutenant Grace walked to the center of the arena, her boots making sharp sounds against the metal floor. Grace was 36 years old. She had short brown hair pulled back tight and eyes that seemed to see everything. She wore the standard instructor uniform, dark blue with silver badges that showed her rank. Before becoming a teacher, she had spent 12 years in special forces. That training never left her. "Henderson, center position," Grace called out. Two cadets stepped forward. Henderson was 22, tall and fit with hair cut military short. He moved with confidence but not arrogance. Emma was shorter, with red hair and a braid. Both wore training uniforms and carried practice weapons on their belts. "Today we focus on weapon retention," Grace said. Her voice carried across the arena without shouting. "In combat, keeping your weapon is as important as using it. Henderson, show the disarm defense sequence." Nodded, Emma approached him and reached for the training pistol on his hip. His hands moved fast, blocking her attempt and pivoting away. Emma tried again from a different angle. Again defended. The movements were smooth, practiced. The alien students watched with interest. A few took notes on their devices. Humans were not the strongest species in the Galactic Union, nor the fastest. But they were adaptable, and their combat training impressed many observers. Grace was about to call for a different technique when the arena doors opened. Commander Park entered, and he was not alone. Walking beside him was a figure that made several students whisper. She stood nearly 7 feet tall on 4 legs. Her body resembled a praying mantis from Earth, but larger and covered in smooth green chitin. 2 primary arms folded against her thorax, while 2 smaller arms hung at her sides. Her head was triangular with large compound eyes that reflected the arena lights. "Attention," Grace said calmly. The whispers stopped. Commander Park was a man in his 50s with gray starting to show in his black hair. He had run the Galactic Military Academy for 8 years and did it well. "Lieutenant, allow me to introduce Ambassador of the People." She requested to observe our training methods. Grace gave a respectful nod. "Ambassador, welcome to Station Arcturus. We are honored by your presence." His translator device, attached to her thorax, converted her clicking speech into clear words. "The honor is mine, Lieutenant. The people have recently joined the Union. We wish to understand all aspects of member cultures, including your combat practices." Grace knew about they were famous for being peaceful. Their entire philosophy centered on avoiding violence. They had no military, no weapons, no history of war for over 300 years. Many in the Union wondered why such a species bothered to observe combat training. "Our methods focus on defense and protection," Grace said. "We train to defend, not to attack." "A noble distinction," replied. "Yet I see weapons, I see strikes and blocks. Where is the line between defense and aggression?" It was a fair question. Grace had heard it before from pacifist species. "The line is intent. We prepare for threats but hope never to face them. We study violence to prevent it." His head tilted slightly. "I would like to observe from the arena floor if permitted. The observation deck is too distant. I must see closely to truly understand." Commander Park hesitated. "Ambassador, the floor is for active participants. The observation deck has better viewing and is safer." "I am willing to accept any risk," said. "Please, I insist. My people will not understand if I report only what I saw from a distance." Park looked at Grace. She read the question in his eyes. Grace gave a tiny nod. "Very well," Park said, "but please remain near the wall, away from the training area." "Of course," agreed. The ambassador moved to the edge of the arena. Her 4 legs made her movement fluid and strange. She settled near the energy barrier, her eyes fixed on Emma. "Continue the demonstration," Grace ordered. And Emma resumed. This time Grace called for weapon transition drills. Drew his training pistol, a bulky device that fired harmless light pulses. The weapon looked real enough, shaped like standard plasma sidearms used throughout the Union. It had weight, balance, and all the safety features of a real weapon. Emma moved to disarm him, defended, transitioned the weapon to his other hand, created distance. The movements were textbook perfect. Grace watched with approval, but part of her attention stayed on. The ambassador watched with intense focus, her head tracking every movement. "Excellent form, Henderson," Grace said. Try the approach from. Moved, one moment she stood still by the wall. The next she crossed 10 meters in a blur of motion. Her primary arm snapped out with shocking speed. Barely had time to register the movement before appendage wrapped around his training pistol and yanked it from his holster. Every alarm in the academy screamed at once. The sound was deafening. Red lights flashed throughout the arena. The energy barriers, which had been a soft blue, turned blazing red and tripled in thickness. Metal shutters slammed down over the observation deck windows. Emergency doors sealed with heavy clangs. The entire arena went into lockdown in less than 3 seconds. Stumbled backward, his face showing pure shock. Emma moved to his side instinctively. Grace felt her training take control, pushing down surprise and analyzing the situation. She positioned herself between her cadets and the ambassador. Stood frozen, holding the training pistol in her primary appendage. She looked at the weapon, then at the screaming alarms and red barriers. Her translator worked overtime. "I do not understand. I only wish to examine the device. Why this response?" "Nobody move," Grace said firmly. Her voice cut through the alarm noise. "Ambassador, please place the weapon on the ground slowly." "But I meant no harm," protested. The translator made her sound confused, even frightened. "I simply wanted to feel its weight, to understand why humans carry such things." Grace did not answer immediately. Her eyes scanned body language. The ambassador's stance seemed relaxed, non-threatening. But Grace had spent years learning to read people and aliens. Something felt wrong. She could not name it yet, but her instincts raised warnings. Commander Park's voice boomed from hidden speakers. "This is Commander Park. Everyone in the arena remain calm and stay in position. Security is responding. Lieutenant, report status." Grace kept her eyes on. "No injuries, Commander. Situation is stable." "Ambassador," Park's voice said more gently, "please place the weapon down and step away from it." She set the pistol on the floor and moved back 3 steps. "I apologize for causing alarm. This was not my intention." The arena alarms finally stopped, but red lights continued to flash. Grace heard running footsteps outside. Security would arrive in moments. She used the time to study more carefully. The ambassador's compound eyes were hard to read, but her body position had changed. When she first grabbed the weapon, she had moved with incredible speed and precision. Now she stood with her 4 legs spread in what looked like a nervous stance. Her smaller arms twitched slightly. Her head turned toward the sealed doors, then back to Grace. Grace noticed something else. The training pistol lay on the floor where had placed it. The weapon's status light, normally green, was blinking yellow. That meant the biometric scanner had detected something. These weapons were designed to work for authorized users only. They would alert if someone else tried to use them. But the alarms had been too extreme for a simple unauthorized access. Station Arcturus had layers of security protocols, basic alerts for minor issues, moderate alerts for threats. Full lockdown was reserved for critical dangers. This was full lockdown. Grace's military training had taught her to trust her gut. Right now, her gut said that Scrab had not been curious or innocent. The speed was too perfect. The timing too precise. Had been demonstrating weapon retention, showing exactly where the pistol sat on his belt, and had grabbed it at the exact moment when his hands were occupied in a defensive movement. Seemed to realize the same thing. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "I never told her which side I carry my sidearm on. She went straight for it without looking." Grace filed that observation away. "Stay quiet, cadet." The emergency doors unsealed with a hiss. Security Chief Logan Pierce entered with 4 armed guards. Pierce was a solid man with dark skin and sharp eyes. He assessed the scene instantly, noting positions and the weapon on the floor. "Lieutenant," Pierce said formally, "are you and your cadets unharmed?" "Affirmative, Chief." Pierce looked at, "Ambassador, I need you to remain exactly where you are. Do not move." "I am complying," said, "but this seems an extreme reaction to simple curiosity." "That will be determined," Pierce replied. He gestured to his team. 2 guards moved to secure the training pistol. They used specialized tools, never touching it directly. Grace watched the process. 1 guard pulled a scanner from his belt and ran it over the weapon. His expression changed from neutral to concerned. He looked at Pierce and gave a quick hand signal. Pierce's jaw tightened. "Lieutenant, please escort your cadets to the exit," Pierce ordered. The commander wants all non-essential personnel cleared from the arena. Grace did not argue. Henderson with me. As they moved toward the door, Grace glanced back at. The ambassador was not looking at the guards or the weapon. She was looking up at the energy barriers, her head tilted in a way that seemed calculating rather than confused. Grace stored that image in her memory. Outside the arena, more security personnel rushed past them. Commander Park waited in the corridor, his face grave. "Take your cadets to the briefing room and wait there," he told Grace. "I will join you shortly. We need to discuss what just happened." Briefing room was small and quiet. Grace sat at the metal table with an Emma on either side of her. Neither cadet spoke. They had been trained to wait for orders, and Grace appreciated their discipline. Through the room's single window, she could see the station's central hub where ships came and went. Grace used the silence to review what had happened. Every detail mattered: the speed of movement, the precision of her grab, the way she held the weapon after the alarms went off, and most important, that calculating look at the energy barriers. Finally broke the silence. "Lieutenant, did I do something wrong?" Grace turned to him. The young man looked worried, almost guilty. "No, cadet, you followed protocol perfectly." "But she took my weapon right off my belt. I should have noticed her moving." "She moved faster than human reaction time allows," Grace said. "No one could have stopped her without prior warning." Emma frowned. "But they are supposed to be peaceful. They do not have warriors or combat training. How did she move like that?" It was a good question. Grace had been thinking the same thing. What do we know about reading body language across species? Answered immediately, reciting from memory. Body language varies by species, but certain patterns are universal. Aggression creates tension. Fear creates hesitation. Deception creates microcorrections. "And what did you observe in Ambassador after the alarms went off?" Emma thought for a moment. She seemed confused, maybe scared. She kept saying she did not understand why the alarms went off. "Her words said that," Grace agreed. "But what did her body say?" Sat up, she was not shaking. Her legs stayed solid. When Security Chief Pierce came in with armed guards, she did not back away or show submission. "Exactly," Grace said. "Her words claimed confusion and fear, but her body showed calm control." She paused. "There is something else. When I looked back before we left, she was not watching the guards. She was studying the energy barriers." The door opened. Commander Park entered with Security Chief Pierce. Both men looked serious. Park gestured for Grace and her cadets to remain seated as he sat down across from them. "Lieutenant," Park began, "what I am about to tell you is classified as of 5 minutes ago. Do you all understand?" Grace and Emma all nodded. Pierce pulled out a tablet and set it on the table. "When our guards scanned the training pistol, they found trace amounts of a compound on its surface. The compound transferred from Ambassador's appendage when she grabbed the weapon." Grace leaned forward. "What kind of compound?" "A neural toxin," Pierce said bluntly. "Specifically one that is banned under Union law. It is called 7. In its base form, it is harmless. But when exposed to plasma energy, even low-level training plasma, it converts into an airborne agent." Emma's eyes went wide. "The training pistols have plasma capacitors." "Correct," Park said. "If the Ambassador had activated that weapon, or if it had discharged during the struggle, the toxin would have become a gas. Everyone in the arena would have been incapacitated within seconds. Death would follow in minutes without treatment." "Looked sick. My weapon could have killed everyone." "Not your weapon," Grace said firmly. "The toxin she brought with her." Pierce nodded. "The lieutenant is correct. This was planned. The biometric scanner on the weapon detected not just unauthorized access, but also the presence of 7. That is why we had a full lockdown. The system recognized a critical threat." Grace's mind worked through the implications. She came to the academy specifically to do this. "We believe so," Park confirmed. "But there is more." He tapped the tablet, bringing up an image. It showed a molecular structure that meant nothing to Grace, but the label below made her pause. "This toxin is naturally produced by only one known species." Though Grace guessed. "A subset of," Pierce corrected. "Most are exactly what they claim to be: peaceful, diplomatic, non-violent. But historical records show they had a warrior caste called the L. These warriors were supposedly wiped out in a civil war 200 years ago." Emma stared at the image. "You think the Ambassador is one of these L?" "We are certain of it," Park said. After we detained her, we ran a complete biological scan. Her exoskeleton chemistry matches historical records of the L, not the diplomatic caste. She has been pretending to be something she is not. Grace felt pieces clicking together. How many other ambassadors are there in the Union? Park's expression grew darker. 17. They arrived over the past 8 months, always in small numbers, always to observe or learn about human facilities. Human facilities specifically? Grace asked. Yes, military bases, research stations, defense planning centers. They showed interest in other species as well, but their focus was clearly on humanity. Pierce added, 3 other ambassadors are currently on facility tour right now. One is at a weapons research station, one is at a colonial defense headquarters, and one is on a diplomatic ship headed to a peace summit. Grace stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the ships in the distance, thinking. This was a coordinated plan, multiple infiltrators in key positions. That is our assessment, Park agreed. Ambassador was supposed to eliminate you, Lieutenant, possibly the cadets as well, make it look like a training accident. With you gone and several promising students dead, it would have hurt our training program and our morale. Why target me specifically? Park hesitated. Your record is impressive, Lieutenant. Special Forces, multiple successful operations, expert in threat assessment. You train the next generation of security personnel. Taking you out would remove an asset the Union values. His hands formed fists on the table. So this was assassination disguised as curiosity. Yes, Pierce said simply. Grace turned back to face the room. What is happening with the other 3 ambassadors? That is the problem, Park said. We cannot simply arrest them without proof. If we are wrong, we damage relations with an entire species. If we are right but act clumsily, they might trigger whatever plans they have early. We need to identify them definitively and stop them without causing panic. How do we identify them? Emma asked. Pierce brought up another screen on his tablet. The L can mimic diplomatic caste behavior almost perfectly, but they have tells. Their biochemistry is different. Under stress, they secrete specific compounds. Their reaction times are too fast, and according to our analysis of Ambassador, they have one psychological weakness. What weakness? Grace asked. Overconfidence, Pierce said. They are trained warriors who have been pretending to be pacifists for months. They think we are soft, trusting, and slow to recognize threats. Ambassador did not expect the training weapon to have advanced biometric security. She did not expect the alarms. She definitely did not expect Lieutenant to notice her body language. Grace understood where this was going. You want someone to observe the other ambassadors and identify them. Not just identify them, Park said. We need them to reveal themselves the way did. We need clear evidence and we need to stop whatever they are planning. And you want me to do this? Grace said. You are uniquely qualified, Park replied. You read intentions when no one else did. You noticed the details that mattered. Your ability to observe behavioral patterns across species is exactly what we need. Grace looked at Emma. Both cadets sat straight, waiting. What about my students? The academy will continue with substitute instructors, Park said. But Cadet Henderson will accompany you. He has proven he can remain calm under pressure and follow your lead. Look surprised but determined. I am ready, Commander. Park stood. The most dangerous assignment is the diplomatic ship. It carries Senator Martinez and several high-ranking officials. The suspected L infiltrator, ambassador, or has access to the ship's life support systems. If he follows the same pattern as, he will try to cause mass casualties that look like accidents. When does the ship reach the summit station? Grace asked. 48 hours, Pierce answered. You need to be on that ship, identify and stop him before he acts. Grace nodded slowly. She had trained for years to recognize threats. This was what she did. What resources will we have? Pierce handed her a small case. Inside were what looked like standard diplomatic recording devices. These are modified to detect biochemical signatures. They look like cultural exchange gifts. You can carry them without suspicion. We also modified your personal comm to work as an emergency beacon. If you trigger it, Union security will respond immediately. What is my cover story? You are an academy instructor bringing a promising cadet to observe high-level diplomacy, Park said. It is a legitimate program we run occasionally. No one will question it. Emma spoke up. Commander, permission to speak. Park nodded. I would like to help prepare Lieutenant and Cadet Henderson for the mission. I can assist with equipment checks and briefing materials. Park considered this. Granted, you will work with Chief Pierce's team for the next 6 hours. The Lieutenant and Cadet will depart on a fast courier at 800 tomorrow. Grace looked at. The young man met her eyes without flinching. He was nervous, she could see that, but he was ready. She appreciated his courage. Cadet Henderson, Grace said, for this mission I need you to understand something. We are not warriors charging into battle. We are observers. Our job is to watch, to learn, and to identify the threat. The actual neutralization will come from others. Do you understand? Yes, Lieutenant. Watch and identify, not engage. Good, Grace turned to Park. We will need detailed information about, or everything we know about him, his patterns, his behaviors. Already prepared, Pierce said, handing her a secure data chip. Study it tonight. Memorize his known mannerisms and habits. The more you know, the better you can spot inconsistencies. Park stood and the others followed his lead. Lieutenant, you stopped one assassin today through careful observation and quick thinking. Now we need you to do it again, but this time on a ship where one wrong move could kill hundreds. Grace took the data chip. I understand, Commander. One more thing, Park said. Ambassador is currently in detention. She has not said a word since we confronted her with the evidence. But before she went silent, she said something our translator picked up. She said humans are too trusting, and that we failed to see the threat standing right in front of us. She is wrong, Grace said quietly. We saw the threat. That is why she is in custody. Park allowed himself a small smile. Indeed, let us prove her wrong 3 more times. The briefing ended. As Grace and left the room, Emma walked with them for a moment. Loot the fast courier ship Stellar Wind cut through space at speeds that would have been impossible 20 years ago. Grace sat in the passenger compartment reviewing files on her tablet while checked their equipment for the 3rd time. They had been traveling for 18 hours. Captain Lisa piloted the ship alone. She was a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and the steady hands of someone who had flown through dangerous situations before. Grace trusted her completely, had military experience, and knew how to keep quiet about classified missions. We are 6 hours from the Unity's promise, called from the cockpit. The diplomatic ship is maintaining standard cruise speed. We should dock without any issues. Grace acknowledged with a brief response and returned to her files. She had spent most of the journey studying Ambassador, or the information was detailed, but something about it felt too clean, too perfect. According to records, or had arrived 7 months ago. He had visited 4 human facilities, always as an observer. His reports praised human innovation and expressed desire for cultural exchange. His behavior had been friendly, curious, and completely non-threatening. Every interaction seemed designed to build trust. That was what bothered Grace. Real people had quirks, made mistakes, showed genuine emotion, or his record read like someone playing a role too carefully. Finished his equipment check and sat down across from Grace. Lieutenant, I have been thinking about something. Go ahead, Cadet. Ambassador moved incredibly fast when she grabbed my weapon. Do you think or will be the same? Probably, Grace said. The L are warriors. Speed would be a natural trait. Then how do we stop him if he moves faster than we can react? Grace set down her tablet. We do not stop him by being faster. We stop him by being smarter. We create a situation where his speed does not help him. Nodded slowly, by predicting what he will do before he does it. Exactly. Think about. She saw an opportunity when I told you to demonstrate weapon retention. She knew exactly where your pistol was, and she knew when your hands would be occupied. She planned her move in advance. So we need to understand Or's plan. Yes, and more importantly, we need to understand his weaknesses. Chief Pierce said the L are overconfident. They think we are too trusting and slow. We can use that against them. His voice came from the cockpit. Grace, I am getting a priority message from Commander Park. Audio only, putting it through now. Park's voice filled the compartment. Lieutenant, we have an update. About an hour ago, 2 crew members on the Unity's Promise went missing. They were supposed to report for duty but never arrived. Ship security is conducting a search, but so far nothing. Grace felt cold certainty settle in her gut. L infiltrators. That is our assessment. The missing crew members are a systems engineer and a life support technician. Both have high-level access to critical ship functions. Leaned forward. Commander, if they have been replaced by L, that means there are at least 3 enemies on that ship. Ambassador, Or, and 2 disguised as crew. Correct, Park confirmed. And possibly more. We are working on getting you backup, but the nearest Union security ship is 12 hours away. You will be alone on the Unity's Promise until help arrives. Grace made a quick decision. Commander, inform the ship's captain about the situation. Tell him to increase security around engineering and life support, but do not tell him about our mission. We need to maintain our cover. Already done. Captain knows to watch those areas, but not why. As far as everyone else knows, you are just an instructor and a cadet observing diplomatic procedures. Understood. Grace, Park's tone became more serious. The summit begins in 36 hours. If the L plan to sabotage the ship, they will likely do it when the Unity's Promise is closest to the station. Maximum casualties, maximum political damage. We will stop them, Grace said simply. I know you will, Park out. The connection ended. Grace looked at. The young man's face showed determination, but also the intelligence to be concerned. Good. Fear kept you sharp as long as you controlled it. Cadet, listen carefully. When we board that ship, we are playing roles. You are an eager student learning about diplomacy. I am a patient teacher. We smile, we ask polite questions, and we watch everything. What exactly am I watching for? Grace pulled up an image of Or on her tablet. The L looked almost identical to 7 feet tall, mantis-like with green chitin and compound eyes. The real diplomatic caste have subtle differences from the L. Their movements are slower, more deliberate. They hesitate before entering new spaces. They avoid sudden movements that might startle others. Because they are actually peaceful, said. Right, the L are warriors pretending to be peaceful. They will have trained to copy the behavior, but under pressure, their true nature will show. Watch for reaction times that are too fast. Watch for predatory tracking, where the eyes follow movement with hunting precision. Watch for defensive positioning, where they unconsciously place themselves with tactical advantage. Study the image, and if I spot these things, you signal me subtly. Touch your right ear if you see fast reactions. Touch your left ear if you see predatory tracking. Touch your nose if you see tactical positioning. Do not make it obvious. Understood. Called out again. Coming up on the Unity's Promise now. Prepare for docking. Grace and gathered their equipment. The modified detection devices were disguised as cultural exchange gifts, carefully packed. Their personal belongings looked exactly like what a teacher and student would bring for a diplomatic observation visit. The stellar wind matched velocity with the larger ship and connected to an airlock. There was a soft bump and a hiss as the seals engaged. Open the hatch. On the other side stood a man in a Union diplomatic uniform. He was middle-aged with dark hair and a professional smile. Lieutenant, Cadet Henderson, welcome aboard the Unity's Promise. I am First Officer Carlos Martinez, nephew of Senator Martinez. The senator asked me to greet you personally. Grace and stepped through the airlock. The diplomatic ship was much larger than the stellar wind, with wide corridors and high ceilings. Everything was polished and elegant, designed to impress visiting dignitaries. Thank you for having us, First Officer, Grace said. We are honored to observe the summit preparations. The honor is ours, Martinez replied. The senator believes future military leaders should understand diplomacy as well as strategy. Please follow me. I will show you to your quarters and then give you a tour. As they walked, Grace noted the ship's layout. Emergency stations every 20 meters, security cameras at major intersections, armed guards at key access points. The Unity's Promise took security seriously. Martinez talked as he guided them. We have representatives from 8 species aboard, including 3 ambassadors. Everyone is excited about the summit. It is rare to have so many Union officials in one place. I imagine security must be challenging, Grace said casually. We have excellent protocols, Martinez assured her. Captain runs a tight ship. Nothing happens here without his knowledge. They reached the guest quarters. Martinez opened the doors to show 2 small but comfortable rooms. You will have time to settle in. Tonight there is a diplomatic dinner in the main hall. Casual dress, just an opportunity for everyone to meet before the summit. I hope you will both attend. We would be happy to, Grace said. After Martinez left, Grace entered his room and closed the door. Grace immediately pulled out a small device and scanned for listening equipment. The room was clean. "We have 5 hours until dinner," Grace said quietly. "That gives us time to explore the ship and locate Ambassador or—" "Should we check engineering first?" asked. "If the L took out the engineer and technician, that is where they will strike." "No, if we go straight to engineering, it looks suspicious. Remember, we are observers learning about diplomacy. We need to act natural." Grace pulled out her tablet and brought up the ship's public layout. "We will take a casual tour like interested visitors. We walk slowly, we ask innocent questions, and we observe. Specifically, we observe anyone who reacts to us with too much interest." "Understood. Because the L know about the Academy. If or knows about what happened to, he might recognize your name." "Exactly. Martinez introduced us by name. If Or is monitoring communications, he knows we are here. The question is whether he will see us as a threat or just as what we pretend to be." They left their quarters and began exploring. The Unity's Promise had multiple decks. The upper decks held diplomatic suites, conference rooms, and the main hall. The middle decks had crew quarters and recreation areas. The lower decks contained engineering, life support, and cargo. Grace and moved through the upper decks first. They passed several crew members who nodded politely. They saw 2 aliens in the recreation area, but neither was. Grace noted security camera positions and emergency access points. Information might save their lives later. In the main hall, preparations were for the evening dinner. Crew members set up tables and arranged chairs. A large on one wall showed the stars streaming past outside. Grace approached a crew member, a young woman arranging place settings. "Excuse me, we are guests observing the diplomatic process. Will the ambassadors be attending dinner tonight?" "Yes, ma'am," the woman replied. "All 3 ambassadors will be there, ambassador from, and ambassador from the collective." "Thank you," Grace smiled and moved away. Touched his right ear subtly. Grace glanced where he was looking. Standing near a doorway was a figure in crew uniform, but the posture was wrong, too straight, too aware. The person watched the preparations with eyes that tracked every movement in the room. Grace steered them toward that doorway naturally, as if simply exploring. As they got closer, she saw the crew member was human, a man in his 30s with brown hair. His name tag said Stevens, but something about him felt off. They passed within 3 meters. The man's eyes flickered to them, held for half a second too long, then away. A normal person would have either ignored them or acknowledged them with a nod. This half-second assessment felt like a threat evaluation. Once they were out of sight, Grace spoke quietly. "That was one of them, disguised as human crew." "How do you know?" "The eyes, did you see how he looked at us? He was measuring distance, angles, threat level. That is combat awareness, not casual observation." Nodded, "So we have confirmed at least one infiltrator besides Or." They continued their tour, making their way gradually toward the lower decks. Grace wanted to see engineering, but they needed a reason to be there. As they walked, she noticed more crew members who felt wrong. Not obviously so, but wrong enough that her instincts raised warnings. How many L were on this ship? They found another access corridor that led toward engineering. A security guard stood at a checkpoint. Grace approached with her most friendly expression. "Hello, we are Academy guests doing a facility tour. Is it possible to see engineering? My cadet here is fascinated by ship systems." The guard checked his tablet. "I am sorry, ma'am, engineering is restricted right now. Captain's orders, increased security protocols." "I understand, thank you anyway." They turned away. Grace filed that information. The captain knew something was wrong and had locked down critical areas. Good. That would make the L's job harder. As they walked back toward the upper decks, touched his nose. Grace followed his subtle indication. At the end of the corridor stood another crew member, this one a woman. She was not watching them directly, but her position gave her a clear view of the entire corridor while keeping her back to a wall. Classic tactical positioning. 2 confirmed L, possibly more, and they still had not seen Or. Grace checked the time. 3 hours until dinner. She made a decision. "We should return to quarters and prepare. Tonight at dinner Or will be there. That is when we make our assessment." They returned to their rooms. Grace spent the time reviewing her mental notes and planning different scenarios. Practiced the subtle signals they had agreed on. When it was time, they both dressed in appropriate casual uniforms and headed to the main hall. The room had transformed. Tables were set with elegant place settings. Soft music played from hidden speakers. About 30 people were already there, mixing and talking. Grace scanned the crowd and spotted Ambassador, a large, bear-like creature with brown fur. Ambassador stood near a floating being that resembled a jellyfish with bioluminescent patterns. And there, near the center of the room, stood Ambassador, or he looked exactly like, same height, same green chitin, same compound eyes. He was speaking with an older human man who Grace recognized from the files as Senator Martinez. Or's translator clicked and hummed as he spoke. Grace entered the room calmly. First Officer Martinez spotted them and waved them over. "Lieutenant, Cadet, glad you could join us. Come, let me introduce you to some people." As they crossed the room, Grace watched, or from the corner of her eye. The ambassador's head turned slightly toward them. His compound eyes, difficult to read, seemed to track their movement. Then he returned his attention to the senator. Martinez made introductions. They met several diplomats and crew members. Everyone was polite and welcoming, but Grace's attention stayed partially on Or. The ambassador moved through the room with Grace, speaking to various people, showing all the signs of a friendly diplomat. But Grace noticed things. When someone approached or from behind, his head turned a fraction of a second before they spoke. Combat awareness. When he picked up a glass of water, his grip was precise and firm, the grip of someone used to handling weapons. And when he laughed at someone's joke, the laugh ended exactly 2 seconds later, timed perfectly rather than fatting naturally. He was good at pretending, but he was still pretending. Grace needed to get closer to engage him in conversation. She waited for the right moment. When Or was briefly alone, she approached with beside her. "Ambassador Or, I am Lieutenant Grace from the Galactic Military Academy. This is Cadet Henderson. We are observing the diplomatic process as part of our educational program." Or turned to face them fully. His translator hummed, "Lieutenant Cadet Henderson, what an interesting coincidence." Grace kept her expression friendly and confused. "Coincidence, Ambassador. I recently heard about an incident at your academy involving an ambassador. Ambassador, I believe. I understand there was some misunderstanding during a training observation." Grace's heart rate increased, but her face showed nothing. "Yes, there was an unfortunate incident, a simple miscommunication about safety protocols." "Indeed," Or said. His tone was impossible to read through the translator, but his body language was very still. "I hope Ambassador was not harmed." "Not at all. Everything was resolved peacefully." Or's head tilted slightly. "Peacefully, that is good. We value peace above all things." Grace smiled. "Of course, Ambassador." They talked for a few more minutes about harmless topics. Education, cultural exchange, the dinner continued around them, but Grace felt the tension like a wire pulled tight. She had moved away from Or naturally, not rushing, not showing concern. They joined a conversation with 2 diplomats from the delegation, asking polite questions about trade agreements. But Grace's mind worked on the real problem, Or knew who she was. He had mentioned deliberately, testing her response. His words said he believed the academy incident was a simple misunderstanding, but his body language said otherwise. He was evaluating her as a threat. The dinner served food from multiple cultures. Grace ate small amounts, maintaining her cover as a casual observer. Did the same, though she could see he was nervous. His hands stayed steady, but his eyes moved too often toward Or's position. After an hour, people began leaving the main hall in small groups. Grace saw Or excuse himself from a conversation and head toward the exit. She waited 30 seconds, then touched his arm gently. "We should return to our quarters. Early start tomorrow." They left the hall and walked toward the guest deck. Grace took a route that passed near the observation lounge, a large room with windows overlooking space. As they approached, she saw Or standing alone near the windows, his back to the door. Grace made a decision. "Cadet, go ahead to your quarters. I want to speak with the ambassador briefly." Understood immediately. His hand moved to his pocket where he carried his personal comm. If Grace needed help, he would call it. "Yes, Lieutenant." He left. Grace entered the observation lounge quietly, Or did not turn around, but his translator clicked. "Lieutenant, I wondered if you would follow me." Grace moved to stand several meters away, keeping distance between them. "You wanted to talk. Here I am." Or finally turned. In the dim light of the lounge, his compound eyes reflected stars from the window. You are not what you pretend to be, an instructor observing diplomacy. No, you are here because of. And you are not a peaceful ambassador, Grace replied calmly. You are L. The translator hummed for a moment, then or made a sound that might have been a laugh. Direct, I appreciate that. Yes, I am L, as are several others aboard this ship. How many? Enough, but I did not ask for this conversation to discuss tactics. I have a proposal for you, Lieutenant. Grace waited. She kept her hands relaxed, her posture neutral, but she was ready to move if needed. Or continued. You captured impressive. She underestimated human security systems. I will not make that mistake, but her capture has created a problem for me. Union security now knows about the L. They will be searching for others like me. That is your problem to solve, Grace said. Actually, I believe it is a problem we can solve together, or moved slightly closer. Grace held her ground. I am prepared to offer information, the locations of other L infiltrators throughout the Union, plans for future operations, everything your security forces would want to know. In exchange for what? Safe passage, asylum, and assurance that I will not be treated as the enemy. Grace studied him carefully. His stance was relaxed. His voice through the translator sounded reasonable, even slightly desperate. Everything about him said he was a defector looking for a way out. But Grace had trained for years to recognize deception, and something felt very wrong. Why would you betray your own people? She asked. Because I have lived among humans and other Union species for months now. I have seen something my people do not understand. Cooperation, trust. The L believe the galaxy operates on strength alone, but I have watched human diplomats turn enemies into allies. I have seen weak species thrive through partnership. Our planned invasion is suicide. We cannot win against a united Union. It was a good story. It hit all the right emotional notes. Redemption, seeing the light, choosing peace over violence. But Grace noticed details, or smaller arms which should hang relaxed were positioned slightly forward. His legs maintained a stance that allowed for rapid movement, and his compound eyes, while focused on her face, kept flickering to her hands. He was not a defector. He was a predator choosing his moment to strike. Grace decided to call his bluff. If you truly want to defect, then come with me now to meet Captain. We can arrange secure communication with Union security. You can provide your information under proper protection. Or's translator hummed for a long moment. I am afraid I cannot do that, Lieutenant. Not yet. There are complications. Other L aboard this ship would know immediately if I contacted the captain. They would act before I could provide my information. Then tell me where they are. I will have security detain them. Again, not possible. They have positioned themselves in critical areas. Engineering, life support. Any attempt to arrest them would result in catastrophic sabotage. This ship would be destroyed. Grace kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. He was stalling for something. Every word was designed to keep her talking, keep her in this room. But why? Then she understood. Or was not the main threat right now? He was the distraction. While he kept her occupied with talk of defection and information, the other L were doing something else. What time is the sabotage planned for? Grace asked bluntly. Or's stance shifted slightly. Excuse me. You heard me. When do your people plan to destroy this ship? We both know you are not a defector. This conversation is theater. You are keeping me away from something. For a moment, Or stood perfectly still. Then his translator made that laughing sound again, but harder this time. You are perceptive, Lieutenant. Yes, this conversation is theater, but not for the reason you think. He moved forward one step. Grace stepped back, maintaining distance. The sabotage is already complete, Or said. While everyone attended dinner, my associates made modifications to the life support system. In approximately 20 minutes, everyone aboard this ship will begin to fall unconscious. Within an hour, all will be dead. Grace felt cold certainty, except you and your L. We have personal breathing apparatus. We will survive. The ship will drift toward the summit station with hundreds of dead diplomats and officials aboard. The Unity's promise will become a tomb. Humanity's reputation will be destroyed. Other species will question human ability to protect their own people, let alone others. Why tell me this? Grace demanded. Why not just let it happen? Because you were a variable I needed to control. If you remained free, you might discover the sabotage and find a way to reverse it. Better to keep you here talking until the process is too far along to stop. Or's translator clicked. You see, Lieutenant failed because she attacked directly. I learned from her mistake. Indirect methods are more effective against humans. You trust too much. You want to believe in redemption and peace. That weakness is fatal. Grace's hand moved slowly toward her pocket where her emergency comm sat, or saw the movement and lunged forward with shocking speed. Grace threw herself sideways, rolling across the floor as Or's appendage struck the space where she had been standing. She came up running, heading for the door, or pursued, moving on his four legs faster than she could sprint. Grace grabbed a chair and threw it behind her, or smashed through it without slowing. Grace hit her comm as she ran. Emergency, alert security, life support compromised, sabotage in progress. She burst into the corridor. Two crew members stood there, startled. Grace shouted at them. Seal this corridor, emergency lockdown. One crew member moved to a wall panel. The other drew a weapon, but before either could act or exploded from the lounge. His appendage struck the armed crew member, sending him flying into the wall. The other crew member hit the lockdown button and ran. Emergency barriers began dropping from the ceiling. Grace dove under one as it slammed down, separating her from Or. Through the transparent barrier, she saw him smash against it with tremendous force. The barrier held, but cracks appeared. Grace did not wait to see if it would break. She ran toward the nearest comm panel and activated it. This is Lieutenant Grace. I am declaring a code black emergency. Sabotage in progress. All security to engineering and life support immediately. Captain, respond. The comm crackled. This is Lieutenant, explain. Captain, the life support system has been sabotaged. You have less than 20 minutes before everyone on this ship loses consciousness. I need engineering to check for unauthorized modifications now. A different voice came through. This is Chief Engineer Park, already on it, Lieutenant. We detected unusual readings 5 minutes ago and started investigating. Someone modified the air mixture controls. We are working to reverse it. How long? 10 minutes, maybe 15. It is complicated work. Behind Grace, she heard the sound of the barrier breaking, or was coming through. She ran again, this time toward the engineering deck. Her comm chirped. Lieutenant, I am with Security Chief Adams. We are heading to life support. Multiple hostiles confirmed. Stay together and be careful. These are fast. Grace reached a junction and saw 3 security officers running toward her. Lieutenant. Yes, there is a warrior behind me. He is extremely dangerous. The officers raised their weapons. Get behind us. Grace moved past them, seconds later, or rounded the corner. The officers fired stun weapons. The energy beams hit Or directly, but he barely slowed. His appendages struck out, hitting 2 officers before they could react. The third officer switched to lethal force, firing plasma rounds. One round caught Or in the shoulder. Green blood sprayed, but he kept coming. Grace grabbed the fallen officer's weapon and fired as well. More hits, Or finally stumbled and fell. But he was not dead. His translator clicked weakly. Too late, Lieutenant. Even if you fix life support, my people control engineering. They will destroy the ship rather than let you win. Grace knelt beside him, keeping her weapon ready. Where are they exactly? Or's compound eyes seemed to dim. You will never reach them in time. We will see about that. Grace left him with the remaining conscious security officer and ran toward engineering. Her comm was alive with multiple voices. Security teams engaging hostiles throughout the ship. Medical teams preparing for mass casualties. Captain coordinating the response. Grace reached engineering to find the entrance sealed. Through the window, she could see 2 figures in crew uniforms working at consoles, but their movements were too fast, too precise, wearing human disguises. His voice came through her comm. Lieutenant, we cleared life support. Chief Engineer Park is working on the air mixture controls, but the triggered a cascade failure. He needs access to the main engineering console to complete the fix. Grace looked at the sealed door. Engineering is locked down with 2 hostiles inside. Can you breach the door? Grace examined the lock mechanism. Standard security door designed to withstand significant force. But she noticed something. The door had an emergency medical override. If someone inside was having a medical crisis, the door could be opened from outside. She pulled out one of the modified detection devices, the ones disguised as cultural gifts. The device could detect biochemical signatures, but it could also broadcast them. Grace adjusted the settings and placed the device against the door's medical sensor. The sensor detected what it thought was a life-threatening medical emergency inside engineering. The door unlocked. Grace burst through with her weapon ready. The 2L spun toward her, their human disguises still in place but their movements completely inhuman. Grace fired at the closest one, hitting him in the chest. He went down. The second L grabbed a tool and threw it. Grace ducked, and the tool smashed into the wall behind her. She fired again, but this one was faster. He closed the distance before she could get a clean shot. They grappled. The L was stronger, his grip like steel, but Grace had trained in close combat for years. She used his momentum against him, redirecting his force and striking at vulnerable points. Her elbow hit what she hoped was a breathing orifice. The L made a choking sound and loosened his grip. Grace broke free and fired at point-blank range. The L fell. "Engineering secure," she gasped into her comm. "Chief Park, you can send your team in." Park and 3 technicians rushed in moments later. They ran to the main console and began working frantically. Grace watched the clock on the wall. 18 minutes since or had told her about the sabotage. If Park could not fix the air mixture soon, people would start losing consciousness. "Come on," Grace whispered. Park's fingers flew across the controls. "I have it. Revering the modifications now. Air mixture returning to normal in 3, 2, 1. Grace felt a subtle change in the air, or maybe she imagined it, but the readouts on the console showed green across the board. "We did it," Park said, relief clear in his voice. Grace allowed herself one deep breath, then activated her comm. "Captain, this is engineering secured, life support restored. Recommend ship-wide security sweep for any remaining hostiles." "Agreed, Lieutenant, and thank you. You saved every life on the ship." Grace left engineering and made her way back toward the guest deck. She found with Security Chief Adams, both looking tired but unhurt. "Lieutenant said, are you injured?" Grace looked down and saw blood on her uniform, not hers. "I am fine, Cadet, report." "We secured life support and detained 1L who was trying to sabotage backup systems. Total count is 5L confirmed aboard. Or the 2 in engineering, the 1 at life support, and 1 more who was caught trying to reach an escape pod." 5 infiltrators on 1 diplomatic ship, Grace said. This was a major operation. The Unity's Promise docked at Summit Station without further incident. Grace stood at the observation window watching security teams escort the captured L off the ship in restraints. 5 infiltrators, all now in Union security custody. The plan to turn the diplomatic ship into a tomb had failed. Captain found her there. He was a man in his 60s with gray hair and the weathered look of someone who had commanded ships for decades. "Lieutenant, I wanted to thank you personally. If you had not recognized the threat when you did, we would all be dead." "I had help, Captain. Cadet Henderson performed excellently. Your crew responded quickly. Chief Engineer Park saved the ship." "True, but you were the one who saw through Ambassador Or's deception. How did you know he was lying about being a defector?" Grace thought back to that conversation in the observation lounge. His body language, every word said one thing, but his posture said another. He positioned himself like a fighter, not a frightened diplomat seeking asylum, and his story was too perfect. Real defectors are conflicted, uncertain, or was calm and controlled. Nodded, the same skills that stopped Ambassador at the Academy. "The L made a mistake," Grace said. "They studied our weapons and our tactics, but they did not understand how humans read behavior. They thought they could pretend to be peaceful, and we would believe them completely. And now we know their methods. Union security is checking every ambassador in Union space. They have already found 3 more L using your observation techniques." Grace turned from the window. "What will happen to them?" "That is a question for people above my rank, but Senator Martinez told me something interesting. The real diplomatic caste is horrified by what the L did. They are offering full cooperation to identify any remaining infiltrators. This might actually strengthen relations between humanity and the genuine people." "Good, war was never necessary." Smiled. "You sound like a diplomat, Lieutenant. Sure you do not want to leave the Academy?" "I am certain, Captain. I teach because I believe the next generation should learn what I know. How to recognize threats, yes, but also how to avoid fighting when possible." They talked for a few more minutes before return to his duties. Grace made her way to the medical bay where was finishing his checkup. The young man had a bruise on his shoulder but was otherwise fine. "Ready to return to the academy?" Grace asked. "Yes, Lieutenant. Though I have to admit, I learned more in the past 2 days than in the past 2 months of classroom training." That is often how it works. Experience teaches faster than textbooks, but textbooks give you foundation. Both are necessary. They returned to the stellar wind where Captain waited. The courier ship undocked and began the journey back to Station Arcturus. Grace spent much of the flight writing her report for Commander Park. Did the same, documenting everything he had observed and learned. When they arrived at the academy 2 days later, they found that news of the incident had spread. Students and instructors alike greeted them with respect. Grace deflected most of it, insisting that many people had worked together to stop the threat. Commander Park called her to his office. Security Chief Pierce was already there, along with someone Grace did not recognize. The stranger was a woman in her 50s wearing a Union security uniform with the rank of Admiral. "Lieutenant," Park said, "this is Admiral Susan, Director of Union Security Special Operations." Grace stood at attention. "Admiral," waved her hand. "At ease, Lieutenant. I came here personally to discuss your future. Your actions on the Unity's promise were exceptional. You identified and stopped a major enemy operation with minimal resources and no backup. That is exactly the kind of initiative we need in Union security." "Thank you, Admiral. I am offering you a position, commander of a new unit focused on threat assessment and infiltration prevention. You would train specialists in behavioral analysis across multiple species, build a team, set protocols, essential work." Grace had expected this. It was a logical offer after what had happened, but she had also thought carefully about what she wanted. "Admiral, I am honored, but I must decline." Raised an eyebrow. "May I ask why?" "Because my work is here, training the next generation. If I leave to command a security unit, I stop teaching. But if I stay, every student I teach learns what I know. Multiply that over years, and hundreds of officers will have these skills instead of just me and a small team." Park smiled slightly, considered this. "That is a long-term strategic view, Lieutenant. I respect it, but we still need your expertise. What if we compromise? You continue teaching here, but you also serve as an advisor to Union security. We send you difficult cases, situations that require your specific skills. You provide analysis and recommendations. When necessary, you take field assignments, but your primary role remains as an academy instructor." Grace thought about it. The arrangement would let her continue teaching while still contributing to broader security efforts. "That would be acceptable, Admiral." "Excellent. Chief Pierce will coordinate with you on the details." Stood. "One more thing, Lieutenant. The captured L have been interrogated. Most refused to speak, but one has been more cooperative. He claims he surrendered because of something you said to him. Do you know which one I mean?" Grace frowned. "Surrendered, all 5 were captured by force." "Not on the Unity's promise. A different operation. At the same time you were stopping the ship's sabotage, Union security raided a L cell at a research station. One of the infiltrators there laid down his weapons and surrendered without fighting. He told interrogators that he had spoken with another L who had been captured, and that conversation changed his perspective." "Which L did he speak with?" "The one you caught at the academy. Apparently, while in detention, she sent a coded message to other operatives. But instead of warning them, she told them what you had said to her after the alarms went off." Grace tried to remember. She had said many things during that incident. What specifically? Pulled out a tablet and read from it. "You told her that humans see threats but still offer choices. Fight and be defeated, or surrender and be treated with dignity. You said that understanding an enemy is not weakness, it is strategy. And you said that the L misunderstood cooperation, thinking it made humans vulnerable when actually it made them stronger." "I do not remember saying all of that." "Maybe not in those exact words, but it made an impact. This L operative, his name is Al, says that message made him reconsider the invasion plan. He realized the L could not win against a species that combines military strength with genuine attempts at understanding. So when security raided his position, he chose to surrender." Grace absorbed this information. "What will happen to him?" "That is still being decided, but he is providing valuable intelligence about remaining L operations. He might earn some form of clemency." Paused. "You did not just stop attacks, Lieutenant. You may have started changing minds. That is powerful." After the meeting, Grace returned to her normal duties. Within a week, the academy settled back into routine. Students trained, instructors taught, and life continued. But there were changes. Security protocols were updated. Behavioral analysis became a mandatory course, and Grace found herself teaching more classes about threat recognition. 3 weeks after the Unity's Promise incident, Grace was supervising combat training in the same arena where everything had started. Henderson and Emma were demonstrating defensive techniques. Other cadets watched and learned. Grace noticed someone enter the observation deck. She looked up and saw Commander Park with a visitor. But this was different from and/or. Smaller, with lighter coloring and movements that were gentle rather than predatory. After class, Park brought the visitor to meet her. "Lieutenant, this is Ambassador Hen of the diplomatic caste. She wanted to meet you personally." Hen's translator hummed softly. "Lieutenant, I come with gratitude from my people. The L used our appearance to commit violence. This brought shame to all, but your actions proved that individuals are judged by their own choices, not by how they look. You captured L without condemning all. For this, we are grateful." "Ambassador, I simply did my job. I observed behavior, not appearance." That distinction matters greatly. Many species might have responded with prejudice, assuming all were threats. Your careful approach has allowed genuine human relations to strengthen rather than collapse. They talked for a while about cultural exchange and future cooperation. Hen explained that the diplomatic caste was working with Union security to develop methods for identifying L infiltrators. Grace offered to share her observations about behavioral differences. After Hen left, approached Grace. "Lieutenant, request permission to ask a personal question." "Go ahead, Cadet." "Do you think we will face more situations like the Unity's Promise? More infiltrators and hidden threats?" Grace looked out at the training arena thinking, "Probably. The galaxy is large and complicated. There will always be groups that choose violence over cooperation. But that is why we train. That is why we stay alert. Not because we want to fight, but because being prepared prevents fights. And if we do have to fight, then we fight smart. We observe, we understand. We give enemies chances to choose differently, but if they keep attacking, we stop them." Grace turned to face fully. "You did well on that mission, Cadet Henderson. You stayed calm, followed orders, and adapted when things went wrong. Those are qualities of a good officer." Straightened, "Thank you, Lieutenant. I learned from watching you." Then remember the most important lesson. Violence should always be the last option, not the first. But when it becomes necessary, you act decisively and without hesitation. That balance is what separates professional soldiers from thugs. Over the following months, Grace continued teaching while also advising Union security on several cases. She helped identify 2 more infiltration attempts by different species. She developed training programs that were adopted throughout the Union military, and she watched her students grow into capable officers. Graduated with honors and was assigned to Union Security's Threat Assessment Division. Emma became an instructor herself, teaching hand-to-hand combat. Many other students went on to important positions, carrying Grace's lessons with them. One day, almost a year after the Unity's Promise incident, Grace received a message from Union Security. Al, the L who had surrendered, had completed his debriefing and cooperation agreement. As part of a rehabilitation program, he was being allowed to serve as a cultural consultant, helping Union security understand L's psychology and methods. The message included a request. Al wanted to meet Grace and thank her personally. Commander Park approved the meeting, which would take place in a secure conference room with guards present. When the day came, Grace entered the conference room to find Al waiting. He looked like the other L she had encountered, tall and mantis-like, but his posture was different. Less aggressive, more uncertain. "Lieutenant," his translator said, "I appreciate you agreeing to this meeting." "Al, I understand you have been cooperating with Union security." "Yes, it has been difficult. L culture teaches that cooperation with former enemies is betrayal. But I have learned something. True strength is not refusing to change. True strength is being able to see when you are wrong and choosing a different path." Grace sat down across from him. "What made you change your mind?" "Something told us. She said you gave her a choice even after capturing her, fight or surrender. She chose to fight in her way by staying silent, but the fact that you offered the choice at all confused her. L do not offer choices to defeated enemies." "We are not L." "No, you are not. And that is why our invasion plan could never succeed. We prepared to fight human weapons and human tactics. We did not prepare to fight human values. You offer redemption. You try to understand enemies. You build alliances instead of conquering subjects. Those things make you stronger, not weaker. Grace leaned back in her chair. Will Otherell understand this? Some will, some already do, but many will not. They will continue to see cooperation as weakness until they are defeated or convinced otherwise. My hope is that by working with Union security, I can help prevent more violence. Teach your people how they'll think so you can stop them without killing them. That is a worthy goal. I hope you succeed. They talked for another hour. Al shared insights about our culture, psychology, and training methods. Grace listened carefully, asking questions and taking mental notes. The information would be useful for her students and for Union security. Before leaving, Al said one more thing. Lieutenant, among my people there is a saying, the strongest warrior is the one who wins without fighting. We always believed this meant intimidation, making enemies surrender through fear. But I think it means something else. It means creating situations where fighting becomes unnecessary. You are that kind of warrior. Grace thought about that as she returned to her daily duties. Was she a warrior who won without fighting? Maybe, but that was not how she would describe herself. She was a teacher who helped others recognize when fighting was necessary and when it was not. She was an observer who saw threats but also saw potential allies. She was a human who believed cooperation beat conquest, not because conquest was impossible, but because cooperation built things that lasted. That evening, Grace stood in the training arena after classes ended. The space was empty and quiet. She walked to the center where had been standing when grabbed his weapon. That moment had started everything. One grab, one alarm, one decision to watch carefully instead of reacting blindly. Those small things had prevented massacres and changed minds. Grace smiled slightly. This was why she taught, because small decisions made by well-trained people created large effects, because passing on knowledge its impact, because the next generation would face threats she could not imagine and they needed to be ready. She heard footsteps and turned. Emma entered the arena. Lieutenant, I thought I might find you here. I wanted to ask about tomorrow's lesson plan. They discussed training schedules, student progress, and technique refinements. Normal instructor work. But Grace knew it was not really normal. Every student they trained was a potential threat stopper, a possible lifesaver, someone who might one day face their own version of or and need to make the right choice. That night, Grace wrote in her personal log. She did not usually keep detailed records of her thoughts, but recent events seemed worth documenting. Today someone called me a warrior who wins without fighting. I do not think that is accurate. I'm a warrior who fights in ways people do not always recognize. Fighting is not just physical combat. It is observation, understanding, communication, creating situations where the enemy defeats themselves through their own assumptions and mistakes. Thought humans were too trusting. She was wrong. We are carefully trusting. We extend belief and opportunity but stay alert. We hope for peace but prepare for war. We see the good in others while being ready for the worst. That balance is what makes humanity dangerous to those who mistake kindness for weakness. The L learned this lesson the hard way. Maybe others will learn it more gently. My job now is to teach the next generation to maintain that balance, to be strong but not cruel, to be cautious but not paranoid, to be willing to fight but preferring not to. That is the human advantage, not our weapons or our tactics or our technology. Our advantage is that we have not forgotten how to be both warriors and teachers, both fighters and friends. We can be whatever the situation requires. The galaxy is complicated. Threats will keep coming. But as long as we train people to see clearly, think carefully, and act wisely, we will be ready. And that is enough. Grace closed her log and looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, former enemies were becoming allies. Former threats were becoming partners. Not all of them, not quickly, but it was happening. The arena alarms that went off when Grab's weapon had done more than warn of danger. They had started a process that proved what humanity could do when pushed. Not conquer, not destroy, but observe, understand, and offer better choices. Grace hoped that lesson would spread further, but if it did not, she would be ready to teach it again. That was her purpose, and she was content with it. The next morning, she returned to the training arena where a new group of cadets waited. Humans and aliens together, learning to protect themselves and others. Grace looked at them and saw the future. "Good morning," she said. "Today we begin advanced threat assessment. The first lesson is simple. The best way to stop an enemy is to see them before they see you. Let me show you how." And so the teaching continued. "Captain wants to see you," Adam said. "He is on the bridge." Grace nodded. "Get checked by medical, then get some rest. Well done today." "Thank you, Lieutenant." As Grace walked toward the bridge, she thought about what Or had said. He claimed the L believed humans were too trusting, that cooperation made them weak. But he was wrong. Cooperation was exactly what had saved the ship. Security, engineering, medical, all working together. That was human strength. The Unity's promise would reach the summit station safely, and the message would be clear. The L had tried to prove humanity weak and failed. Instead, they had proven the opposite. Of understanding between species, Or was perfect in his responses, saying exactly what a peaceful diplomat would say. But Grace saw the truth. She saw it in the way he positioned himself with his back to the wall. She saw it in the way his eyes tracked every person in the room. She saw it in the controlled precision of every gesture. Ambassador Or was L, and he knew that Grace knew. The question was, what would he do about it? "Be careful, these L sound very dangerous." "They are," Grace agreed. "But they made a mistake. They assumed we would not notice them. That gives us an advantage." Added, "They studied our weapons and our tactics, but they did not study our ability to read people." Grace nodded with approval. "Exactly right, Cadet. Now let us go study everything we can about Ambassador Or. We have one chance to stop him before he kills everyone on that ship." Grace nodded and led Emma away. Behind them, the arena doors sealed again. Through the small window, Grace caught one last glimpse of. The ambassador stood perfectly still now, surrounded by security. But those compound eyes tracked Grace until the door shut completely. And in that moment, Grace was certain of one thing. Whatever had just happened was no accident.